First off, I'll introduce myself. My name is Eli Baker. I'm the Water Resources Education Specialist here at the Tip of the Mitt Watershed Council. I work on a lot of our school-age education programs, a lot of our promotional events or educational events. I help out with a lot of those. So this kind of presentation where we just talk about general watershed ideas, this is what I do with my students all over our watersheds. So I'm happy to do this with you all today. And just to let you know, we are recording the presentation to share with folks who weren't able to make it today. I'm going to start off by sharing my screen here. Okay, hopefully you can all see my screen. I have a co-host here who's going to let me know if you guys can't see the screen. So Natalie, just let me know if anything happens. I'm going to just get started. So today's presentation is all about watersheds. We called it Watersheds 101 because it's kind of a primer on not only what watersheds are, but why they're so important to us, how we affect and impact them through our actions, and then how do we protect them. So today's presentation, I already went through the introduction. I'm going to be talking a little bit about what the Tip of the Mitt Watershed Council is. This is our first icebreaker series, so I just wanted to start off for those of you who may be new to the area or new to the Watershed Council. You can learn kind of what we do, what we are. Then we're going to talk about some facts about water. Water is something we use every day, but some of us take water for granted. It's really easy for us to just go turn on the tap and get nice clean water, but it doesn't go that way for everybody in the world. So I really want to get us in a good understanding about how important water really is to us. And then we'll go into our watersheds, what watersheds are. I have a couple of really great resources to kind of explore your local watershed. Then we'll talk about how we can protect those watersheds. Again, I've got some resources. We're going to go to the Watershed Council website where you can check out the variety of different programs and resources that we have, publications, etc. And then we'll finish up with question and answer section. Natalie's going to come on and read out your questions if there are any. If you do have questions while I'm going through the presentation, feel free to put your questions in the Q&A section, which on your screen will show up at the bottom of the webinar bar. It should just say Q&A. Go ahead and type it in there and we'll check or address it at the end of the presentation. So to start us off, we'll talk about the Tip of the Mitt Watershed Council. We are a nonprofit, started back in 1979, and our whole mission is to speak for the waters of Northern Michigan. I'll read out our mission statement here for everybody. We're dedicated to protecting our lakes, streams, wetlands, and groundwater through respected advocacy, innovative education, technically sound water quality monitoring, thorough research, and restoration actions. We achieve our mission by empowering others, and we believe in the capacity to make a positive difference. We work locally, regionally, and throughout the Great Lakes Basin to achieve our goals. So our mission statement, in broad terms, is just we want to help people better understand what's going on in Northern Michigan here with water resources and how we can work together to protect them. This is our service area. As you can see, it covers a fairly large part of Northern Michigan here, including 4 counties: Antrim County, Charlevoix, Emmett, and Sheboygan County. You'll notice, though, that we also extend beyond those county boundaries to include these other areas of the map, and these are actually watershed boundaries. And I'll talk a lot more about how we define those boundaries a little later on. But when we look at protecting a water body, we need to look at the entire watershed in order to protect it. And that's why our map kind of has this different look to it, not just the straight county lines. Within this service area, we have a bounty of water resources, including more than 2,500 miles of rivers and streams, including the Jordan River, Boyne River, Maple River, Sturgeon River, Pigeon River, Black River. Those are just the big ones. And then there's countless other rivers in there too. Multiple ones of those are blue ribbon trout streams, meaning they're either pristine habitat for trout or still in a relatively natural state. We also have 14 lakes larger than 1,000 acres, some of the biggest ones in the state. For example, Lake Charlevoix has the longest shoreline of any lake in the state. So we've got pretty incredible water resources on the larger lakes, but then we also have thousands of smaller lakes, anywhere from 1,000 acres to 10 acres. And then often forgotten are our wetlands. We have 363,998 acres of wetlands. So within this service area, we have a lot of water that we are trying to help people better understand and help protect. And there are 3 ways we achieve that goal. We practice sound science, respected advocacy, and innovative education. And I've got a few slides to talk about each of these different branches of our mission. First off, we have the sound science. We practice monitoring, research, and restoration. These pictures here show some of that monitoring that occurs. On the left, you have a volunteer lake monitor, and our volunteer lake monitors go out every summer, every week or every other week, and collect valuable information, including pH, dissolved oxygen, temperature, visibility of their lake. Usually there are people who live on the lake who can just take their boat or kayak out and take this data. And this data has been collected for decades on a lot of our lakes. So if you're ever looking for data on lakes or streams, check out the Watershed Council's website. We also have over on the right, volunteer stream monitors. For over a decade now, we've had stream monitors going out every spring and fall and looking at water quality and what's living in rivers and streams all over our service area. Both of these opportunities are something that anybody can join. It just includes one training, and then we'll get you your equipment and we'll get you on a team, and you can start monitoring and looking out for the water resources in your area. We are actively seeking for anybody to volunteer or join us. So if you're interested, send us an email and we can get you set up on a team. In the middle there, we also work with local partners to identify specimens and manage all the data that is collected by our volunteer stream and lake monitors. That's a picture from the local college here in Petoskey, North Central Michigan College. On the other side, apart from collecting the data, we also do on-the-ground restoration. Things like road stream crossing improvement projects, small dam removal, stormwater management, shoreline engineering projects, stream bank stabilization, aquatic invasive species management. And that's a whole host of different types of projects that we engage in. I've got some pictures in this slide and the next one to show you a couple examples. This picture right here shows a rain garden that was built into the Bayview development. They were having issues with stormwater with all of the development and the streets they had on the hillside. It was flowing and causing sediment to fill in their roads and then going right down to the lake. So we helped them develop some rain gardens and bioswales, which will capture that rainwater and allow it to soak in and infiltrate the ground before it ends up going into the lake. A couple other pictures. The picture on the left and the right are images of the Stormwater Wetland project that was installed at North Central Michigan College, or NUCMUC. And this is a series of wetland basins that collect all of the water from the entire parking complex at North Central Michigan College. And the whole goal of that wetland is to slow down that water before it flows into the Bear River and allow the water to naturally filter out any pollutants or any excess nutrients or trash. It will capture all of that before it goes into the Bear River and eventually Little Traverse Bay in Lake Michigan. Another project that we participated in recently is this stream or river crossing of Minnehaha Creek outside of Petoskey. Before, this was a series of 3 culverts. It was really restricted, and it stopped the passage of fish movement between the 2 sections of the stream. Opening that up allows fish like brook trout, which are the state fish, to move up into quality habitat for reproduction and feeding. So there's a variety of projects we engage in. Every year has its different set of projects. If you're interested in more information, you can check out our website. And then we also work with our local partners and local government partners to develop watershed management plans. Once we understand where a watershed is, we can figure out what's going on in that watershed and try to help people as a community protect the watershed that they live in. There's a lot more that goes into these plans, developing and implementing them. If you're interested, there is most likely a watershed management plan somewhere near you or in your area. So let us know if you're interested in learning more about watershed management plans. We also engage in respected advocacy. Like I said, it's locally, regionally, statewide, throughout the entire Great Lakes Basin. We have 2 staff that are devoted to policy. They work with the lawmakers. We assist in the development and implementation of fair and technically sound laws. And then we analyze and comment on local, state, and federal policy. This includes a whole variety of laws and issues, including topics with or conversations with Enbridge to water quality issues, dredge and fill applications. We review hundreds of development proposals each year. Many are to dredge and fill wetlands, lakes, and streams. We provide comments to appropriate agencies to limit or avoid environmental degradation. So we try to help people understand how what they are planning on doing may change or impact the health of the water body that they're near. We also host a whole variety of issue campaigns. Every year there's different campaigns that are going on. We design and implement these campaigns to improve resource laws or address efforts to weaken them. Citizen involvement is a hallmark of environmental protection. We want to engage people who live in the areas that are dealing with these environmental issues. So we plan, develop, and execute campaigns to engage lake association or community group members on an issue. Like I said, each year there are these campaigns going on, and to find information on them, you can either join us as a member of the Watershed Council, or you can check out our website. There's an event page. And then we come on to my branch of the Watershed Council's work, is the innovative education. A team of us at the Watershed Council work to implement either school-age education, adult education programs, or just promotional activities. Pictured here are some of those programs from our high school stream monitoring program, where we engage a local group of students. We help them understand that they live in a watershed. What they do impacts the health of that watershed, and then we put that knowledge to action by taking them out into the field and actually performing a stream monitoring session on a local stream. That picture there shows students from Onaway High School, and they're standing in Shanty Creek. And we went to that creek in the fall, and we were looking at what's living in the creek, the water quality, and then the land, the physical attributes around the creek. All of that data that they collected is then used by the Watershed Council. It's the same level of data that we collect as staff, that our volunteer stream monitors collect, and it's all used and valuable data. And then over on the right, the team collected specimens, and they sent those specimens up to Lake Superior State University, where students, college students, then helped us understand what families or species of insects are living in the stream that help us get a good idea of how impacted that stream is by human activity. In the middle, we have a picture of middle school students from Petoskey Middle School, and they're engaged in a program called the REP program, or Water Resources Education Programming. And the whole goal of that program is to give students kind of a foundational understanding of what watersheds are, how important water resources are, and then how we impact the water resources around us. After 4 sessions, the students then go out and implement a project to improve water resources right there in their school community. This team had the fantastic idea to put in a rain barrel to stop water from running off the eaves over an entrance on the school and washing away the ground beneath those eaves. So they put in a rain barrel, they got a company to put in the gutter structure, and then they planted native plants with another team to help protect that site where erosion was occurring right on the school grounds. So our goal is to help show students that not only do they have a stake in the watershed, but they have the ability to positively impact that watershed. Here's a couple more pictures of those same programs. On the left is the Water Resources Education Programming team. This is at Boyne City Middle School. And on the right, we have a team from Charlevoix High School, and they're monitoring Inwood Creek in Fisherman's Island State Park. And then we have our adult education, or really they're open to anybody. We have a variety of workshops, presentations, seminars, webinars, podcasts, committees. We try to engage people in any way we can to help them understand the importance of protecting and preserving water resources. And then finally, we have events every year. Well, not exactly in 2020, but hopefully going forward, we can start having these events again. Everything from our annual Bear River cleanup, where we engage hundreds or 100 of people to go out and actually get in the river and pick up trash around and in the river. It's been extremely successful, and we're excited to continue that in 2021. We also have trainings for our lake monitoring volunteers. And then this is where we partnered with a local brewery to just have a promotional day where they let us come in, share what we do, and then we all had a good time at the brewery. So if you're interested in any events like this, follow our social media. We have Instagram, Facebook, whatever, and you can also find our information on the website. So that kind of wraps up the Watershed Council, but as you can see, we are all about water. Our whole organization is built around the idea that we are here to protect and preserve water resources, and we want to help other people do that too. In the Great Lakes, I've noticed a lot of times when I'm with students or engaging with groups, we take water for granted. And I know I did, or I still do. I go on, turn on the tap, and I have fresh water ready to drink right there. But it's not that way for everyone on the planet. So I have a few facts to help us kind of get water, or get the right mindset about water. And the first one is, there's the same amount of water on the earth now and as there was millions of years ago. The water that has been here on the earth has always been here. We don't get new water coming in from space. The water that's here is just recycled through the water cycle. You know, we have the process of evaporation, where water turns into gas, goes in the clouds, condensates, or goes up into the atmosphere and condensates into clouds, then falls back down as precipitation. And it just continually goes through that cycle. And what I like to tell kids is, you know, they have a water bottle on their desk. Well, that water in that bottle might be the same water that was drank by dinosaurs millions of years ago. So we need to understand that water is not just this renewable resource that comes out of nowhere that we have an unlimited supply of. Yes, it is filterable and goes through this cycle, but we still need to be aware that we have to protect what clean water we have, or what fresh water we have. The second thing is, without water, the earth would be a completely different place. Water regulates the earth's temperature. Depending on where water is in the oceans, how deep it is, how the currents are moving that water, that's going to impacts the entire climate of the planet. So we need water in more ways than just needing to drink water every day. Then on to an unfortunate fact, 790 million people lack access to improved water sources. That's about 11% of the US, or of the world population. This data came from the CDC website. And that means that people are having to struggle to find water that is easily drinkable or potable. You know, in the US, especially in the Great Lakes, we don't have to think about that very much. But for the rest of us, or for the rest of the world, that might not be the case. And you know we need to drink water, but also a lot of the things we ingest in the form of food require water too. For example, one egg requires about 120 gallons of water. And that might sound strange, but when you think about the entire process that goes into producing that egg, you understand where all that water comes in. For example, you have the chicken, and the chicken needs to drink water. So there's a lot of water right there, but then also there's the water to grow the grains that the chicken then eats. So this process of, you know, making the egg takes a lot more water than just washing the egg before you put it in before you crack it. Same vein, we have chocolate. We all love chocolate. Kilwins is right here in Petoskey, but it takes a lot of water to produce 1 pound of chocolate, 3,170 gallons of water to be precise. That water goes into watering the trees, processing the cocoa beans, eventually making that chocolate. So the way we live is very water intensive. It costs a lot of water, from the things we eat to even the things we do in the bathroom. For example, Americans use on average, about 5.7 billion gallons of water per day from flushing toilets. That is a lot of water that is going into either septic systems or into drains. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it's something we need to be aware of when we look at how we use our water and what that water is being used for. And then finally, this one shocks a lot of students that I talk to. The average American shower uses at least 1 gallon a minute. And I told some students that once, and one of the students raised their hand and they said, well, what happens when I take a 45-minute shower? And I said, well, you've used about 45 gallons of water in that shower. And that they were kind of shocked at that, because we don't think about how much water we use every day for simple tasks like that. So water is incredibly important to us, and it doesn't always get the importance or hold that place of importance that it should. We need to be very aware of the water around us. Thankfully, we live in the Great Lakes, where more than 20% of all the world's fresh water is right here in the Great Lakes. That's a lot of fresh water, and it makes sense. If you look at a map like this, we have 5 massive lakes, and they're all filled with fresh water. And that Great Lakes region is the source of water for more than 40 million people. So not only are we very lucky to be here in the Great Lakes region, but that also means that we have a role to help protect the Great Lakes region. We are not the only ones who use the water either. The Great Lakes are also home to countless species of birds and fishes, reptiles, amphibians, any sort of, there are countless species of animals that rely on healthy Great Lakes. And so when we protect the Great Lakes, we're not protecting it just for the people who use that water, but we're protecting it for the things that live in and make their homes in and around the water of the Great Lakes. And so this idea of protecting the Great Lakes really spawns this idea of how important watersheds are. And that brings us to what is a watershed. This picture demonstrates it very well. We have a land area, and it forms kind of a basin. And a watershed is defined as a land area where all of the water flows to one specific body of water. For example, in this image, you have a land area, it's raining, and all of this water is flowing down into the river here. And so this is this river's watershed. Watersheds are defined by the boundaries or the high points around them. So it's essentially like a lot of basins all around, and each basin drains into a specific body of water. And we are all in a watershed. That's why we use our service area map uses this watershed idea. Because say we were trying to protect the lake or Mullet Lake here, if we wanted to protect Mullet Lake and we were just looking at the Sheboygan County map here, we wouldn't have the whole picture of what's going on in the watershed. So we need to extend our service area to include the watershed boundaries, not just the county boundaries. Like I said, everybody lives in a watershed. You can see here a nice picture of what a watershed or a section of a watershed might look like. You can see we've got lots of different land uses within that watershed, everything from larger cities, smaller towns, farms, dumps, agriculture. And then we have a more natural section where that river is up in the headwaters where it's flowing through. And as that water is flowing through the watershed, what we do on the land impacts what happens in that watershed. And so when we look at this next slide, it really helps us understand how what we do and what we build is going to impact not only how much water moves through the system, but what happens to that water. In a more natural ground cover situation, we have a pretty balanced movement of where that water is dispersing. Around 50% of it goes into the ground and becomes part of the groundwater system. 40% either evaporates or transpirates, meaning it directly turns into vapor, or it's taken up by plants, and those plants put out the water vapor, which goes up into the atmosphere. Only about 10% becomes runoff. As humans start building more and impacting what's happening on the surface of the land, we get changes in what's going on underneath the land. or what's happening with the water. So for example, as we build more and more, the amount of runoff is going to increase. The more impervious surfaces or hard surfaces on the surface of the land are going to stop water from soaking into the land, and they're going to flow off from the surface into the nearest body of water. And as those water, or as that runoff is flowing across the land, it's going to pick things up. And unfortunately, a lot of the things on the surface of the ground are not things we want in the nearest body of water. For example, we have fertilizers. As people fertilize their lawns, sometimes we use excess fertilizers, sometimes we fertilize at the bad or at the wrong time, and a big rainstorm can wash that right into the nearest body of water. Same thing with trash or oils or chemicals from cars. And the last picture, there's a picture of two dogs. A lot of us love our pets, and we've all been to parks or public areas where we see signs that say pick up your pet's waste. Well, we don't just want to pick it up because it's rude and somebody might step in it, but it's also because we want to prevent that waste from flowing into the nearest body of water or through the storm drains into the river or the bay here in Petoskey. So there's a lot we have to think about when we understand that we are living in a watershed, and there's a place that, or we have to, our daily choices impact the health of that water. You know, say you live up here on the farm and you want these crops to grow, and so you go out there and you fertilize them every day. Well, when you get a big rainstorm, a lot of that fertilizer is going to end up washing into the river and eventually out into the bay, where it could cause algal blooms, could cause fish die-offs. So it's very important to understand that we live in a watershed, and that what we do in that watershed impacts what is going to happen to the water that all the water flows into. And so to help us all understand better what watershed we live in, I found this really great tool. It's called wikiwatershed.org, and it's put out by the Stroud Water Resource Center. Can everybody see the screen? Natalie, let me know if you can't see the screen, I guess. This website allows you to model the watershed that you live in, and it's very simple. I'll walk you through the process right now. So they start us off with a map of the entire United States. We'll zoom in on where we are right now, here in Petoskey, and I'm going to model the watershed that I'm in right now. So I'll go down here to Delineate Watershed. I'll pick the continental US map, and then it gives me a little marker. And so I'll take my marker and I'll put it right here in Petoskey, and it'll take a second. And then it's going to generate my watershed boundaries. So as you can see from where I put my marker here, we are in the Bear River watershed. That's this body of water, the Bear River. All of the water that falls within this boundary here is in the Bear River watershed. So if I want to help protect the Bear River, I need to help or understand that everything that happens here around Walloon Lake, up here by Springbrook, it's all going to impact the health of the Bear River. It's also important for me to understand that what I do, even though I'm far away from the water body here, what I do on my property is still going to impact that body of water. And just to show you, we could pick an area way out here away from any major bodies of water. And we are, oh, that one. Sometimes this happens if you pick a specific area. Let's go back, change area. Oops. Let's see, I'll pick up by my house, up north of Pickerel Lake here. And we'll go somewhere over here. And so this is not near any major body of water, but you can see that there is still a watershed here. And this is most likely a drainage watershed. Right here, there's a little wetland complex, and there's a spring that flows through here. And this is in the Pickerel Lake watershed. So no matter where you are in a watershed. So I recommend everybody go to this website here, wikiwatershed.org, and check it out, see what watershed you are in and what happens to your water as it falls and the snow melts. Where's that water going to end up? So once we understand, oh, hold on. once we understand the watershed we live in, we can get an understanding of how what we do impacts the water near us. And so what can we do to help protect the watershed we live in? Well, I'm going to take you to another website here. So this is the Watershed Council's website. We have a whole variety of different topics that you can look at. Underneath hot topics, we have information on aquatic invasive species, clean boating, climate change, high water levels, PFAS, pipelines, septic systems, stormwater, swimmer's itch. Anything you have a question about regarding water resources, you can probably find information about it on our website here. It's just watershedcouncil.org. Well, today I'm going to show you the stormwater runoff section. This section helps people understand how their personal practices impact what's going to happen to the water near them. And so as you scroll down, we have something called the Stormwater Matters Initiative. This was an initiative to help keep Little Traverse Bay from being polluted by stormwater. And so as that stormwater is running across the land around Little Traverse Bay, it has the potential to pick up oil, grease, metals, coolants, fertilizers, bacteria, soil, soap, litter, any kind of spills on the ground. And so to help combat that, we formed this Stormwater Matters Initiative, and it's got a whole variety of different things you can do on your property to help protect the water near you from stormwater pollution. Things like composting. You can help keep food waste out from the landfills or your garbage by using compost, which will then help you by when you have a garden or your plants out front, you can use that compost to help them grow. You can cover bald spots on your lawn by planting native trees, shrubs, or grasses. Don't spread fertilizer too thick. We want to make sure that we understand how much fertilizer our lawns or gardens need in order to better protect the water that we are near. So there's just a whole host of different options or things you can do to protect your the property that you own, or the water near the property that you own, from pollution. This was also, all this information was taken from a document or a publication called the Stormwater Matters. Let me find it here. So we'll go to Stormwater Matters campaign. This document, Stormwater Management Guide, and you can actually download a full copy of this guide from here. We have one specific to Lake Charlevoix and one specific to Little Traverse Bay, but both of these can be used in any watershed you're in. They're just very general tips for protecting that watershed. So I recommend downloading these these publications and learning more about the watershed you live in and how you can protect it. Let me go back to my presentation. That pretty much wraps up my presentation. We can switch over now to our Q&A section, and I'm happy to take any questions that you might have. Let me stop sharing. All right,
Hi, Eli. Thank you for a very informative presentation. It doesn't look like we have any questions yet, but maybe if we want to give people just a minute or so if they're thinking about anything. I do want to give a little pitch. We do have our rain barrel program is back up and running. So I know that's another great way to help protect our watersheds is by capturing that, rain coming off of your roof and downspout. So that's another way people can help. Looks like we do have a question. What are the common misconceptions students have about watersheds?
Oh, that's a good question. So a lot of the students I work with don't even know that a watershed is a thing. Usually when I ask the question, what is a watershed, or what do you think a watershed is? A lot of the students will say, the cheeky answer, a shed with water in it. So, this idea of watersheds, even though it's something we all live in and we all deal with, not a ton of people know about it or really understand that what we do impacts the water we are near. So yeah, some students don't have a good understanding of it. Others think it only deals with the water part, and it's hard to get them to understand that the watershed is more than just the movement of water. It's the movement of water in relation to human activity within that water body or watershed. So I would say those are the biggest misconceptions.
Thanks. We have some more questions coming in. Another participant asked, in terms of lakeshore retention, what is being done to recommend the best solution?
I'm assuming that's in regards to the rising water levels. It depends really where you are and what your property looks like. The biggest recommendation I would say is have somebody come out and look at it. At the Watershed Council, we have multiple staff members that can actually come out and look at your property, or we can look at pictures that you've taken of your property. So I would recommend that we assess the property and let's work together to figure out how best to manage whatever issue you're dealing with, be it erosion, or you might have invasive species on your shoreline. So I recommend having somebody come out, but on our website, you can actually go to a page. There's a page all about lake shorelines and high water levels. So I would recommend finding somebody to look at your property or to talk over it with you, and two, go to our website and find out the information we've got on there.
Great, thank you. Another question is, what teaching activities have you found to be most effective in connecting the idea of all of our watersheds in Michigan connecting and have an impact on the Great Lakes as a whole?
I would say the biggest thing that really helps students understand this idea of watersheds and how important there are is our watershed model. And in the presentation, there was a big plastic model that the students were standing in front of. That's our watershed model. And essentially it allows the students to interact with a mini watershed right there in the classroom. They get to add pollutants in the form of pesticides or fertilizer, which it's just Kool-Aid. And they add them to the watershed, then they spray the watershed with a squirt bottle or add water to it and watch as that water flows across the watershed and directly impacts the water bodies on the watershed model. So that's probably the best tool we have for really helping students understand how that watershed is impacted by our activities. There are also a lot of online resources for watersheds, but the watershed model is the one that we rely on the most.
Great. How would you recommend, or have you seen businesses engage in watershed protection most effectively?
Yeah, I mean, here in Petoskey, a lot of businesses have committed to not only watershed protection, but just environmental protection in general. Some businesses have actually implemented things like rain gardens or green infrastructure on their properties to help collect rainwater from their impervious surfaces. Others have put in native plant gardens to help populate the environment with plants that are beneficial to species and also allow water to infiltrate the ground beneath. So there's a lot of options for businesses. It really depends kind of where the business is and also what they're doing. In Michigan, we have pretty strict guidelines about how businesses have to manage wastewater and the things they produce to not impact the environment. So yeah, it really depends on the business, but there are a lot of options around. If you come here to Petoskey, as you walk around, you'll see some businesses have these rain gardens or rain barrels or different green infrastructure around the town. And other towns have taken that or are doing that as well. It's not just Petoskey. That's just what I know because I work here.
Great. And I would add on that the Watershed Council also is a good place to look for a model.
Right.
So if people are interested in what a rain garden looks like, and we have a gravel pit, I don't know, I forget what you call it, Eli, in our—
It's an infiltration basin.
Yeah.
Yep. It collects all of the runoff from our parking lot and allows it a space to infiltrate into the ground instead of flowing right down to the bay.
Great, thank you. Another person asked, can you tell us a bit more about the rain barrel program?
I might turn that over to you,
Yeah.
Natalie.
So right now we do have rain barrels for sale. We get them from an outside vendor located in the Illinois area, and they are food grade. So that's another plus about the program, is that these are recycled rain barrels. They come in a variety of colors, and for members, there's a slight discount. And it's all on our website. There's an order form and information. But if you have any other questions about it, you can always call the Watershed Council, and I'm happy to help you go through that ordering process. But it's a great program and well worth it. Another question we had here, first of all, this person said, outstanding job, Eli. Any news about whether you'll be able to host Experience Lake Charlevoix for middle school students this year?
My phone is ringing in my office, so that's what you hear in the background. But Students Experience Lake Charlevoix, first off, I'll tell you what it is. It's an annual experience for middle school students in Lake Charlevoix to board the Beaver Islander ferry, and then we take that ferry out onto Lake Charlevoix, and we look at the different aspects of water quality regarding Lake Charlevoix. Students actually get on the boat and do tests, like we look at the depth of the water, we look at the visibility, the pH, the things living on the bottom of the lake. It's an awesome experience. It's been going on for over 20 years now. Unfortunately, last year we had to cancel it due to COVID-19. This year's plan, I am in contact with teachers to try to understand what's going on, but unfortunately, right now it looks like it won't happen unless something changes. We'll see, but at this point, it looks like it probably won't be able to happen. But we are going to continue it in the future, as soon as we can do it again.
Thank you. We do have a good amount of more questions, just to let you know.
That's fine.
And I just want to let people know that if they have to go, this is being recorded, and you can watch at a later date on our YouTube channel. So if people have to leave, we understand, and we thank you for your participation. But we're going to continue on with questions, if that's okay with you, Eli.
Yep.
Another attendee asked, what are the favorite plants people seem to get excited about in softening their shorelines? What plants would you recommend for a 4 by 20 foot section?
So I personally can't recommend specific plants to you. A different staff member deals with kind of recommending what plants. But if you look at the publication, that Stormwater Matters publication, that one recommends plants for rain gardens. We also have another publication, Sensible Development for Lakeshore Property Owners, I believe it's called. That one talks a lot about the different types of plants that you can put on your shoreline and what they will do and how they will react with different levels of water. So there are lots of resources for that, both on our website and on the Michigan Lake Stewardship Association website. So I would go to those resources, or you can contact our Watershed Council office and we can talk a little bit more in depth with you about what your property looks like and what plants are recommended.
Yeah, and we also did a rain garden presentation for our annual meeting, which is a video that you can look up on our YouTube. In terms of purchasing native plants, we usually refer people to Seco Conservation District, which is located in Gaylord. So that's another resource as well.
Yep.
Okay, another attendee asked, how can we push governmental agencies to protect wetlands? What are the most effective policy tools for wetland protection?
So, hang on, I lost my picture here. So the best way is to just give them a call. I know a lot of people don't like doing that, but they do listen, or our officials do listen. And the more people we can get calling on specific issues, especially regarding wetland protections, the better will be. Another option is to contact either the DEQ or any other governmental group that deals with the protection and development of structures on or around wetlands.
Thank you. Another attendee asked, are there statewide guidelines for shoreline owners?
That's a really good question, and honestly, I don't know that off the top of my head if there are statewide guidelines. Some townships or even different governmental units will have different ordinances. It really depends where you are, but that would be a good question to send into the Watershed Council, and I'm sure we could find somebody to answer that for you.
Absolutely. Thank you. We had another question about rain gardens. I'm going to kind of skip over it because we already addressed that a little bit. Again, on our website, we have more information about rain gardens and native plants. And again, you're welcome to email or call in the Watershed Council for more specific questions. Another attendee asked, what resources are available to learn how my septic system is impacting my watershed?
So there are resources for septic system and septic maintenance. If you live on a shoreline and you want to learn about your septic system, you can go to a website called the Michigan Shoreline Stewards program, which is a survey that will walk you through your property practices and how they impact the health of the lake. And that has multiple sections on septic management, and it answers a lot of the questions that you might have about that. So I would recommend the Michigan Shoreline Stewards program if you live on a lake. If you don't live on a lake, then I would recommend going to our website, and we have a whole section under hot topics devoted to septics and septic maintenance and how they impact our water resources. So those two sources I would look at.
Yeah, I would also add on that if you suspect that your septic system is failing or impacting the watershed, that your local health department
Right.
is the one that you would reach out to.
Yep.
Okay, and then we have another comment here that said, Eli, the Lake Charlevoix Association is building lakeshore gardens in Boyne City to show people what plants can be used by the lakeshore. So for some of the people that are asking for examples or questions about that, that might be a good place where people can see what to do for their lakefront property. So thank you, Nancy Cunningham.
Yep. Yeah, and just a note on those gardens, what they did is they worked with several different contractors to develop 7 or 8 different types of lakeshore options that you go with. One of them is much more it's got different structures or paving. One of them is much more natural, and there's a whole range of them. So if you're interested in doing one of these kind of natural shoreline projects on your property, I recommend going down there and looking at those different gardens. They're really good examples.
Great. I have another question here that says, we have a lot of concrete patio near our cabin's lakeshore. Any suggestions on how to redo to create a more pervious surface? We are thinking of taking out concrete and putting in native plants and flagstones to reduce runoff. This is 10 feet from the shore, by the way.
Yeah, anything you can do to build up some sort of vegetated buffer between your impervious surfaces and the lake will benefit the lake's health greatly. The simplest thing you can do is take out impervious surfaces right there on the shoreline and then just let whatever's there grow. We often call that a no-mow zone. That's where, 3 feet back from the lake, you just allow whatever will grow to grow. And not only will that help slow down water that's running off your property, but it can allow that water to infiltrate into the ground. And another bonus is it'll deter geese from actually coming up on your property, because they like to walk up on those nice manicured lawns as opposed to lawn with grasses that they have to walk through where there might be predators. So I would recommend putting a no-mow zone in. The idea of taking out the concrete and adding flagstones and native plants is an excellent idea. Anything you can do to reduce those impervious surfaces will greatly benefit your property.
Thanks. And we have another question here. How can one determine the per acre value of undeveloped wetlands in northern Michigan?
That is a question that I'm not equipped to answer. That would another good question to send into the Watershed Council, and we might have either have the answer or the people who do have the answer for you.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Another person asked, could a virtual tour be created of the demonstration gardens? What a great resource, seeing is believing. I would also jump in on this one and say we do have in that rain garden video, I'm not sure if that's what this person's referring to, but the rain garden video that we produced for our annual meeting this past summer does do a tour of a lot of the local rain gardens. So I would jump in on that. But Eli, if you wanted to add anything else in on that one.
Yeah, Lake Charlevoix Association was the main group that put those gardens in, and they might have some information either on their website, or if you contact them, they might have either pictures or video of the gardens. But as they start growing again this spring, that might be something we can set up with them to really show people a virtual tour of the gardens.
Great. Another participant wanted to give a reminder to inland lakeshore owners that all of the major lakes have associations that have ideas for natural shorelines. So
Yep.
That's another good resource for people to reach out to.
Yep. Yeah. I would just go online and look for local or this lake, type in your lake, and then type in Lake Association or Preservation Association. All of the major ones here in our service area have an association. And if you can't find the association, you can look on our website. We often list lake associations there.
Great. Another person asked, what about the age of wells on property and how that might affect water quality or any buried non-functioning old septic tanks which had been built over?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, those old septic tanks, there's definitely a potential for impacting the health of the water quality. A lot of them were built at a time when the codes were different, or there were no codes for building. So yeah, there is a potential to impact. It's kind of on a case-by-case basis, depending on what you've got there for your well or your septic tank. So I would call either your local, whoever manages the septic system or the well, or you can contact your local health department about that.
Okay, I'm also going to go, we have a few others that commented in the chat section.
Okay.
Can you go over what the new pond type thing is near the curve on Banwell and what it will help with?
The curb on Banwell. Is that, I think I know what you're referring to. And from what I know, that was put in place to allow water to runoff to infiltrate the ground. But what I would recommend for that is we have a staff member who has a better understanding of what that is and why it was put there. So I'd recommend contacting the Watershed Council, and we can put you in touch with them.
Great. Another person asked, do you work with the land conservancies to protect watershed areas?
We do, yeah. We've worked very closely with Little Traverse Conservancy and the Antrim Conservation District, and any district or group that protects the land. We understand the connection between there because of the watersheds, and so we try to work with them. For example, Little Traverse Conservancy, we're on multiple committees with them, but then they've also participated in a lot of our education programs. The Watershed Academy specifically, they came into the Watershed Academy session and talked about the connection between what they do on the land and how it protects what's happening in the water.
Great. Another person asked, what is your best tip for involving people in reducing septic problems? So again, I think we have a lot of questions about septics, which we do have a whole section on our website that people can reach out to. And I don't know if you want to add anything else in about that, but just I would add on just making sure that you keep up with the maintenance of your septic and getting it inspected. And if you suspect any issue with it, contacting your local health department.
Yeah. And spread the word about them. I mean, a lot of students I talk to don't know what septic systems are. And we always try to help people understand that when they flush the toilet or wash things down the drain, it goes somewhere. And so it's important to know where it's going and what happens to it. So just spread the word about septic systems. Yeah.
All right, and I think we just have a few more before we're ready to wrap up and close out here.
Okay,
We had someone who asked to repeat where the shoreline examples are.
on Lake Charlevoix.
I think maybe
Yeah.
that's what they're referring to.
Yep. So if you go downtown Boyne City, right there where the Boyne River comes out into Lake Charlevoix, there are the gardens. They're on the left side if you're looking out towards the lake. But there's lots of signage out there, and all you have to do is walk along the sidewalk, and you'll come to those gardens. You can walk right on the paved sidewalk, and you walk through all 7 or 8 different gardens.
Great. Also, you've had just a ton of praise, Eli, in the chat, people saying thank you and that this was a great informative presentation. Another person, mentioned that they're brand new, that they're with a brand new association, which is the Crooked River Club, which is new.
Oh,
And
okay. Yeah.
to preserve, enhance, and protect the Crooked River watershed. And they're on Facebook, and that they really thought this was helpful and thanked you. So I think we can get ready to close this out. And again, just a reminder, if you had specific questions that weren't answered, feel free to reach out to the Watershed Council, check out our website, follow us on social media. We'd also love for all of you to become members to help support our mission and work with us to protect these watersheds. And this is recorded and will be posted on our YouTube probably within a week. So,
And we have more icebreakers coming up. So please register to those. If there's something interesting, spread the word. We'd love to see big groups like this attend.
Thanks again, Eli.
Yep. Thank you.